Hey guys, in this one, we're going to go over some synths from Jaded by deadmau5. We're going to focus on that longer break section in the second half of the track. This part of the track has some very cool FX processing, so I thought it'd be useful to go over. But I will just play what I have right now. I'm working on a Jaded remake. I still have a long way to go, but this is kind of where I'm at right now. So yeah, that is where I'm at right now. We have these main plucks that come in, and then later we have these plucks that kind of come up in the background to lead us into the drop. We have this kind of square sounding bass, and then I layered it with some white noise. And then there's just this little top kind of squeaky drone that comes in to fill in some atmosphere. So we will go over the plucks first. So this is the Midi for the plucks. And then later on, we get these higher notes that are added. And then this final phrase has this A on top. And then the full pluck MIDI looks like this. So focusing on these plucks, I will take off some of the processing. So I started this with some super saws, and I decided to use multiple voices on both oscillators. This is probably what I should have done on the Brazil video. But this is what it sounds like with just those saws and some white noise. And then what I did is dirty it up just a little bit with some tube distortion. Just a little bit of warmth there. And then the filter is where the pluck shape comes in. So I use the 24 decibel per octave filter. And I'm using this envelope 2 on the cutoff. So it sounds like this. And then as the progression is building up, I am automating the filter cutoff. I'm automating the mod amount of this envelope. So how much this envelope actually is affecting this cutoff. And the way you do that is you go to matrix and you just find the envelope that's attached to your filter. And if you just click on the slider, then it'll bring it up in your automations. The last thing that I'm automating is actually this shape. So this little dot here, I'm automating. And that allows me to get a more precise pluck sound for the different variations as it's building up. So if you're trying to build up plucks kind of like deadmau5, 3 things you should probably be automating are the filter cutoff, the mod amounts, and if you want to get super precise, the slope of whatever filter you're using. So after that, I use some compression. It's just lightly keeping it together, fast attack and fast release. And then it's important to add some plate reverb on this. I thought there's also a longer reverb that comes in, but in the original, you can hear that each pluck sound has its own little reverb space. So that really adds dimension and gives it some atmosphere. So that is pretty much the synth for this. The next thing I did is, as I was mixing this, trying to match it to the reference, I created this little high bump here. This seems to be a common theme in deadmau5's plucks or synths, very oftentimes he will boost that high region. It's just how it works out with the pluck envelope. And then I have this limiter on to cut those peaks so it's not so sharp and it's better to mix in. And it looks like I'm automating that as well. So yeah, I pushed it down on these last two because as they're opening up, they're pretty much fully open in this part. If the limiter was crushing it super hard, it was very noticeable. It gave it some very gnarly kind of crunchy distortion that I didn't like. So I pushed the gain down a little bit so it's not pumping into the limiter as intensely. So the part of the sound that is really cool is the effects. So there's delay and reverb on this. And the difference with these effects is that they're very long lasting. They fill out the space in between those pluck hits. So it's a very atmospheric, very full sounding effects section. So if I throw that delay on as well, it sounds like this. So the way that I did this is I actually split the effects into separate return channels. So I created this audio channel here and I took the audio from the plucks and then I turned it to in. So now we're getting this inputting signal from the plucks themselves. So I threw a delay on there and I set it to 3 and I pushed it all the way up because we want this channel to be completely wet. And then I pushed the delays like a little bit forward so they're not quite hitting the pluck at the exact same time. And then I pushed the feedback up a ton, so it's really lasting a long time. And then another thing I did to make the effect tail off even slower is I threw this compressor on. So the delayed channel is getting compressed and then I'm pumping that volume back up. So it's just allowing the audio to drift off at a slower rate because the dynamics are squashed. So the delayed hits have a more relative volume over time. And then I'm doing some slight sidechain back to the plucks themselves. So when the plucks hit, the delay channel is ducking just a little bit. And then the reason for this utility in the front is because I wanted the signal that's coming in to be attenuated first. Otherwise, this channel just gets too out of control. But that's about it for the delays. I just turned the width down a little bit, just doing some gain to mix it in. And then it was just mixing in the channel with the plucks themselves. And that's how we get the delayed signal. So the next effect that's really cool and a little bit more complicated is the reverb. And the way that I accomplish this is by using the freeze function on Ableton's reverb. So for this one to work, I had to turn the freeze on at a certain point. I decided to turn it on right here after the first pluck hits. It's turned on actually right before this last one. So it's getting the signal from there sent to here. So the next thing that's really important is to turn this cut off, because when that is off, it allows the reverb to take into account the signal as it's changing over time. So as we're getting more high frequencies with this pluck progression, the reverb is responding to that. So we're getting more high frequencies in the reverb itself. This utility, I turned it down as well because this one especially will just build and build and build, and then you'll get some real intense clipping over time. So I wanted the signal to start a little bit lower. And then this EQ is just to get the right tonality of it. It was pretty hard to get the exact sound that deadmau5 had, but this EQ right here, I found gave me the closest tonality. So if I turn this on right here with this first pluck section, so now it's being frozen. And we're getting higher frequencies now. So you can see how the reverb builds as the Plucks build, and we're getting a larger atmosphere that just continues to build and build. And then this compressor again is very important just to contain the reverb so it doesn't build and start clipping. And then I'm doing the same thing where I am compressing it to the Plucks themselves. And then this LFO tool is there just for when the beat comes in. But if I play those two effects together, this is what it sounds like. Okay, so the next little sound that we can go over is this bass. So the bass and this white noise combine to create the low end. So it's pretty much just a square bass. And the notes follow the bass notes of the MIDI pattern. So this one is real simple. All I did is I chose a square saw wave, so you get kind of a mixture between a square and a saw. I added a touch of noise, and then I'm putting on multiband, so it's just a little bit crunchier. So that alone sounds like this. And then I have some EQ to kind of boost that warmness in the lower end, and I'm taking off just a little bit of the highs. But in the original track, you can hear how this bass combines with this white noise. So this noise kind of fills in the space between notes. So with the bass again, kind of get that bouncing like staccato rhythm with that. And with this, I just used an operator, just using noise, and I gave it a little bit of width, and then I'm just cutting the lows, and I just fit those notes in between the bass notes. So real simple, just a pretty solid square wave bass. And the last little thing is this little drone noise. So for this one, I just found some wavetable that I thought had the right high end. I'm high passing it a lot. And then I'm using this LFO to create a more random type of amp envelope. So I have it coming up, it's set at 0.7 hertz. And then there's like another little one. So we're getting kind of a random little swoop of noise in the high end. And then I just threw some reverb on there, and then I'm just delaying it. And again, I am sidechaining it to the Plucks themselves, just so the Plucks have a little bit more room. But that top noise with the bass sounds like this. And then with the Plucks as well. So yeah, that is pretty much that entire break section. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I think the effects processing on this is really beautiful and a little bit more uncommon, I would say. There's some different things going on, like this reverb using the freeze and then some very, very wet delay. But I hope this was helpful. I hope the Plucks explanation was helpful and can lead you somewhere if you're trying to build up Plucks in this sort of way. But thank you guys for watching. Please let me know if you want me to do anything else. I probably will return to this project at some point. I will continue to work on some other stuff. I will throw what I have right now on the Patreon. Thank you guys for watching again. I will see you guys in the next video.